Well, welcome to the Friday Bubble. I've been absent for a little bit, but we've got some nice new vintages coming out, and this is certainly one, a multi-vintage that I wanted to talk a little bit about. Champagne Charlie from Charles Heidsieck. All started back in the 1850s. The house was founded in 1851, and Charles Camille Heidsieck was looking around in Europe at the time, and a lot of the other big Maisons had been hugely successful already. So he travelled much further west and went over to the US. For the first sort of 8 years of his starting the brand, he spent a lot of his time promoting there and got the brand going in quite a big way. He was a very outgoing, charming character, and hence his nickname of Champagne Charlie stuck very early on. Coming a lot more up to date, Joseph Henriot bought the Charles Heidsieck house in 1976. With him, he brought his winemaker, Daniel Thibault, very famous name. And it was only a few years after buying the house that Daniel came up with the great idea of Champagne Charlie in dedication of the founder of the house. In 1979, they released the first vintage of Champagne Charlie, and they just made the 5 of them. And 1985 was the last of them. And coming right up to date, the house then until 2022 didn't have Champagne Charlie being made. And then Cyril Brun at the time put together a blend of multi-vintages. A lot of it was reserve wines, and we'll have a little look at reserve wines. That was based on 2016. Today, we're talking about one based on 2019. 2019 was a fabulous year. It followed a hot year of 2018, really quite solar. 2019 was similar, but there was a lot more subtlety, a little bit more coolness at night times. So I've always tipped the 19s as the vintage and the multi-vintages to look out for. Some fabulous wines coming from that year. So here we are with the Champagne Charlie latest edition. Now, while we're going to talk about reserve wines, I'm going to see if we can find you some pictures to show you of the Charles Heidsieck winery of reserve tanks, because what are reserve wines? Every year, mainly for the non-vintage programme, the winemakers put aside some fabulous wines from that year to go into the reserves to be used for later use in the non-vintages, because they put really good wines in the reserve for that use, because they know they're only ever going to use small quantities in the non-vintage programme. And here, because Charles has such large reserves of reserve wines, they were able to pick some real beauties. So if we look at some of the statistics, so the 2016 base versus the 2019 base, they're really quite different. So this new one, 2019, does a lot more Chardonnay. So I'll have a squint at my statistics. So there's 66% here of Chardonnay, and the rest is all Pinot Noir. Majority of the Chardonnay is from Vertu, majority of the Pinot of the base wine is from Bouzy. They're obviously both really well known for those grape varieties. Now, the reserve wines have changed a lot between the 16 and the 19. With the 19, the reserve wines are 55%, and that's a big change from the first release where it was 80%. Now, because of the shift to grape varieties, so there's 66% Chardonnay, and a lot more of it's from 2019, we should see a very different profile. I haven't tasted this before, so I'm really quite excited to see what it brings. You can certainly spot there's a lot more Chardonnay, and I think one of the roles of reserve wines, there's 2 that I wanted to mention in particular. There's some 1996 Cramant in this blend, and there's also some 2009 Avize. So we've got these reserves that are from, certainly the Cramant 96 is from a strong, bright acidity year, but they've got also quite a lot of ripeness. And so you get this beauty of the 2019 freshness, and then you get the elegance and the texture from these older reserves. Definitely quite tight. This was disgorged only in November 2024. So relatively young at the moment. So you're seeing the yellow fruit really dominate this. So the older reserves, I think, are rather beautiful in this. Definitely on the aromatics, you can see there's There's definitely some creamier character in here. A little bit of that roasted nuts, and even a little bit of roasted tropical, like pineapple and things. So very Chardonnay dominant at the moment, and let's see how it looks on the palate. Wow. Well, for sure, we know there's plenty of reserve wines in here, albeit 55% are reserves. So it makes up a huge chunk. And I think where you really see that is the texture, because you've got some of these older Chardonnays in here. They kind of wrap around the tongue. It's not quite an oily sensation, but it's sort of that somewhere between the oily texture and a bit of velvetiness. It really is rather great. Straight out the door for a young disgorgement, this one is already, for me, looking quite a lot richer and quite a lot more bright, rich fruits than the original release, which I think just needed a lot more time. This one is already feeling a lot more giving, very beautiful aromatics. One of the obvious things I wanted to do, because often with these wines, when they're recent disgorgements and they're a blend of some old and some young, is they need a little bit of space. So I've got the Synergy from Lehman. And actually that is what it needed. It just needed a bit more space, because now I'm picking up some of the other citrus, like the orange character, which is rather charming. And I didn't pick that up in the slightly smaller glass. I really love the mousse. It's got this very soft, gentle mousse, which isn't always something I comment on, but it's very distinctive in this particular champagne. Very, very beautiful. I love that orangey creaminess that it's kind of bringing. Let's just go back and actually, there's no doubt it's at this stage it's way better in the Synergy glass. It seems more complete and more of the fruit and the richness is coming out. Rather beautiful, actually. It really changed the texture in the big glass. So very similar, relatively short lees time. We'll flash all the statistics up, so I don't need to read them out. Relatively small production as well, just 8,000 bottles. So really, really quite small. I love the extra bit of Chardonnay in this one, and the older reserve wines. I think they're rather elegantly combined. I hope you get a chance to taste this one very soon. I'm very pleased to be having this with my lunch today. So cheers, everybody.